All right. Do you see something that says,
This recording has started.
okay,
All
excellent.
right. So I'm just going to go around the screen that I see it, which is probably different than how you see it. But Daniel Brown, you're here. Any updates in your area?
Local updates, nothing too dramatic. We have river walkers are still in full swing, and we are getting a proposal ready for the Eagle Environmental Justice Impact Grants to do PFAS and sediment sampling for fish, for PFAS sampling for fish and sediment in Ford and Belleville lakes. Be similar to what we did with the Ecology Center in past years, but trying to get that in by July 15th. Have had good community interest and support from all 4 of the adjacent communities to those lakes. So
Yay.
that's really our only other update, other than the PFAS conference was amazing. Talked to a lot of you there. And I started pulling together just kind of a reflection blog based on everything that we heard at the conference, sort of key takeaways. Now, I'll still get that out there, but I've just been working deadline to deadline on proposals for the last, whatever it's been, 3-4 weeks. So
Cool.
that's still coming.
All right. Thank you. All right. Dave Wynn.
I'm here. I have no updates other than the Air Force is not continuing not to cooperate. So
Feels bipolar with the Air Force. They cooperate and then they don't, and then they do, and then they don't.
I'm not gonna. I don't want to get into it because we could be here a half hour, but
Okay,
we've been fighting.
we'll make it a drinking game later. All right, Patty Baldwin. Patty,
yes, I'm here. No new updates in my neighborhood really. Other than the phase 2 of the project, the city water hookup has been postponed till next year.
Oh.
And I did attend the PFAS conference and it was wonderful. Thank you, Sandy, and everyone else who was involved. I think Daniel Brown led us on the kayak trip and it was fabulous. So thank you.
Cool, glad you guys are there. Shelley Thurston.
Hello, I don't have any update today.
All right, well, we're glad you're here.
Thanks.
Mary.
Here in Holly, I don't have an update other than the fact that our representative was going to be working on setting up a meeting, and I have not heard that has actually is MPART Eagle. We have not heard either that there's a meeting yet. Thank you.
All right.
And I agree with Daniel and Patty that the national conference was wonderful. And when they talk about urgency and you hear the stories that some of those people are experiencing, yes, there is an urgency. We need to keep pushing for this. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Connie Boris.
Yeah, nothing new to report, but I gotta back up what Mary Blanchard said. I think the things that really hit me at the conference were the families and the children that were affected by PFAS and the farmers, like the farmer from Maine, the state of Maine, and our own Jason. I mean, it was just really heartbreaking to see fail them. So it was a great conference. All right, thank you.
Great, thank you. Rick.
No updates for Ottawa County, and we'll also say the PFAS conference was wonderful, and lots of stories. If you think you've heard stuff in Michigan, there's incredible stories out there, and I do agree. It's it's stating more for urgency, pushing more for urgency. So
great, and I think we were able to do some stuff with the AJ fund there too.
Mm-hmm.
So
yep, absolutely. Thanks.
That's great. I'm not calling on the DHS folks here. I'm looking around. Emma. Are you a COG member? Are you with Senator Peters?
Yes, she is.
Okay, well, you're welcome to say anything. I just hadn't seen your name before, so welcome. Okay, Brad,
Yeah, I don't have any new updates for anything in the Lansing greater Tri-County area. So, but I am here,
Alright.
obviously.
okay, yes, or you wouldn't have been speaking. Bill Barnett,
Howdy, everybody. Just up here in Cadillac back in March, our city manager had made a random announcement at a city council meeting, just basically said that one of the industrial boards that we have here, there's an industrial cleanup going on. Anyway, he indicated, the city manager said that that board had blocked Eagle and/or EPA, the EPA from testing for PFAS. That led to a FOIA that determined that PFAS was found in 2021, that the state was not blocked from doing their testing, which was done at a monitoring well. And that for 3.5 years, the city had sat on the news that there was PFAS in there since 2021. And their LDFA board did vote in 2020 to block any testing on a series of wells and pipes that they have put in place to clean up a Superfund site that included a plating company from the 80s. In any event, that board that oversees the cleanup has agreed. They met and did a complete turnaround from the city's position. It's kind of a city/public board put in place to collect taxes and pay the electricity, basically to funnel water from the groundwater under the industry to industrial park into a carbon system and into the Clam River that's been the recipient of 2 Superfund sites. Also our landfill, who had been dumping high PFAS numbers for years that nobody knew about, which no longer is going on. In any event, the good news is the LDFA, which is the citizen city board that oversees the groundwater Superfund cleanup that was approved 30 years ago, basically 27. They voted to do testing on wells that are going into the carbon if PFAS is found there, because they've never ever tested in 27 years, even though they had a plating company there. And they did nothing since, I don't know, 2021 with the news that there's water they're sucking up and they may or may not be cleaning it as it goes into a river. In any event, the LDFA board recently voted to approve a series of tests little by little. And if they keep finding PFAS, they'll finally get to the pipe that goes into the river. It's a big turnaround because it's an industry board and they don't like talking about pollution or want any cost that might be attributed to that, even though the state would probably be open to paying for those to at least see what's down there and what needs to be done to a historic problem that may or may not be adding to a problem over by a river that's ended up, township just recently moved their water system as well as moved their wells to accommodate for PFAS coming in a region that's over by the Clam River. In any event, we had a local board do a complete turnaround and they're for testing for PFAS now. And the public outrage was pretty bad against our city for not supporting just investigation of PFAS. And everybody's curious that I spoke with as to why the city wouldn't allow testing for PFAS under the industrial park. Why wouldn't they want to know what's down there? Why wouldn't they have an open door policy? And with that, it took 3.5 years to turn around, and there's a movement to find out what's down there and see if the LDFA carbon cleaners need to be adjusted to suit the PFAS that is down there that they found already, and what needs to be done, if anything, to keep the numbers lower and below whatever the federal levels are going to be. If they are, actually, it sounds like they're in place as of today,
Mhm.
actually yesterday,
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
think. Anyway, we have positive movement up here and the eye opener that our city was not real sensitive about PFAS or letting anybody know that they located it
Hmm.
3 or 4 years ago.
Good
So,
job being persistent, Bill.
thank you.
Your community is better for it. Thank you.
Nope.
Lois Graham.
Good evening.
Any updates or?
I'm just listening in.
All right. Well, welcome. Good to have you.
I live in a PFAS desert, but Kelly tells me that it may only be temporary.
You live in a PFAS desert? Oh, we may all be moving there then. All right.
Okay.
Good for you. All right, John.
Yeah, I'm here. Reporting from Nova Scotia. I don't have anything new to report from Ionia County except there was some movement in the solid waste committee to increase the tonnage to pitch landfill, and they're just really the county is just really slow on responding to PFAS issues and those kinds of things. So we're still working with those folks. We'll see how it goes.
All
Really
right.
slow.
Enjoy Nova Scotia and the black
Thanks.
flies that are there, I bet.
Oh yeah, we've been intimately connected.
And Stacy. Stacy, can you are you, it doesn't look like you're muted. All right, we may have to have you call in or something here, Stacy,
Add it in the chat, maybe.
or in the chat, yeah. I'll give a little quick update while I'm waiting for Stacy. If you can monitor the chat, Abby. We have more contamination up here over by the Wolverine Worldwide headquarters. So there's a community meeting on that coming up with a pretty big area, but that's being investigated. For those of you who were at the conference, it was great to see everybody. It was a really good conference. All of the sessions will be available online on the website as soon as we get everything back from the videographer and everything. So all of that information will be available there. And next month, once we have it up, I'll give you guys the link so you can take a look and see all the sessions that were there. There's some pretty impressive speakers there from all over the country, from the United Nations, you name it, they were there. And so, and the stories are really impactful. So it's worth, on a snowy winter day, it will be worth watching if you want to. So I think that is all we have for updates, unless Stacy.
Did Shelley Thurston go? I didn't get anything from Shelley.
I did go. I didn't have any update.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I missed you then.
Nope, that's okay.
All right.
Yes,
It looks like
Sandy,
Stacy did put something in chat.
All right. Stacy wrote, great conference, great to visit with you all. There's some action to be taken place. Still seeing how it shakes out. Okay, it sounds like that's what you were talking about too, Mary, right? They're in Holly, so. And then, Brad, did you have your hand up or you just?
I think
waving?
it was Connie.
Oh, there you go. Okay, Connie.
yeah, just a little bit of insight. This is more for Bill, but if for anybody that's dealing with a PFAS contaminated site, you're going to have to be careful if the testing is done by the potential responsible party's consultant, because they have very sneaky ways to minimize concentrations of contaminants. It would be useful if you could, is to have a third party independent person do the sampling rather than a consultant hired by the PRP. Other alternative is maybe just hiring a sole practitioner who could review it. review the laboratory results, because there are ways, and I can go through them sometime if you want, of how a consultant can minimize concentrations and say, oh no, we're below the level. Well, they're probably not. So be careful. All right, that's all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Connie. All right, so is that everybody? Did anybody sign on later? Did I hit everybody, Abby?
I think so.
Okay. So I don't know if there were any subcommittees that met or have updates. And one of the things oh, go ahead, Mary.
The Engaging the Public Subcommittee met just
Okay.
before this meeting. And Rick, Kelly, Brandon, Thomas, Connie, and myself attended. And we were discussing still the various ways that we could possibly get the information on PFAS out to community. Talking about the fact that the local governments, through their tax statements, are able to determine which locations might need to be notified. But he also said the GIS department in counties could be helpful in various districts. Sending out assessments by addresses or sorting can be done at different levels. He specifically mentioned Allendale with their planning commission and having to inform people. And Connie brought up that Wayne County, you have to go to the Register of Deeds or the tax assessor office, but this takes time and work on the part of citizens. She feels it would be simpler to have a PFAS alert, either by radio announcement or on-air TV media. And that should include that PFAS is traveling could be traveling by air or water. And she felt also that the COG and Eagle have dropped the ball. And I don't want to speak for Connie, but I'm hoping that she'll share some of that, more of that in the actual COG meeting. But she did say that that should be advising people not to get Milorganite or sludge for their gardens, because that also could contain PFAS. And that she felt that health is not being put first and that business is being put first. And she was questioning about the COG, whether we are like a PR aspect for the governor, since we don't have the authority and can't make Eagle or MPART do as we advise. And Rick disagreed. He said that there have been improvements. That the local official calls, which some of the COG members have attended, generally happen, he thinks, within 30 to 45 days. And that, let's see, where is that? That we're seeing mostly small businesses now, and not necessarily large industry. And Connie had said that she has a different perspective because Wayne County, they have the most large sites and also the most environmental justice communities. And then we were talking with Brandon Thomas with MDHHS and Kelly about the state efforts on advising residents to get home wells tested. And Brandon reported that he is working on a media presentation with Brogan, and that he also is working on other information to share with residents in the future. That's what was engaging the public, unless anybody else has Rick or Kelly, Brandon, or Connie to share.
All right. Thank you, Mary. That was very comprehensive. Sure. Were there any other subcommittees that met?
Yeah, we also met the website review committee, Rick and Patty Baldwin, myself, and Brandon. Had a brief discussion. One of the things we'd looked at and Kelly had asked us to look at in the past was to provide a little bit of additional update information on a sheet that she's wanted to revise as far as adding WellLogic to the GIS or the searchable databases that are in the PFAS related search tips page that we have linked on our on the PFAS related websites. And Rick put together some language for that. We discussed that as well as a few other things, but it was pretty low key. We miss Kelly.
All right. Kelly, if you're on, you're missed here. Any other subcommittees? So one of the things I wondered is if at the next meeting on the agenda, if we could talk about subcommittees. And I was looking through the questionnaire that Mary and that group had sent out, and the talk about subcommittees about, is the time okay? I know Kelly's got a lot going on, and so is there a way we can take some of that pressure off of her to set up subcommittee times? Do we need different subcommittees or whatnot? So if people are okay with it, I'd like to add the conversation about subcommittees onto the next agenda and give some thought to how we best want to use that time and come back with some written stuff or something. If that sounds okay to people.
Sounds good.
Okay. Abby, did you have any updates or anything? Any MPART updates?
Only thing I'll just, Kelly didn't do slides for this week, so I will just show the MPART updates on the thing. You guys have seen a lot of this. Some of these aren't brand new. Really, the only one since the last time that, well, I guess there's three since the last time we met, because we skipped June and we came to July, right? So there's a couple. So we've added formal federal screw works in Washtenaw County. That one got listed on 6/5. We are doing some residential well sampling as part of environmental justice. It's a EPA grant that we were awarded to do some residential well sampling in small and disadvantaged communities around certain areas of the state we identified. And so the first part of it is in the city of Jackson, where we think we've got residential wells that are close or already adjacent to municipal water, but they're not hooked up, but they are potentially at risk with all the industry that surrounds them. So looking at doing 4 different areas within the city of Jackson to look at those res wells. That should start here very shortly. OE Berry is in Kent County over in Lowell. That's an industrial drive. So I don't have the exact source of that one figured out, but there will be some small amount of residential wells sampled there. And then the last one we just put up yesterday was Blair Township. Again, this is going to be part of that small and disadvantaged community grant funding that we got to look at some residential wells down gradient of a fire training area up in Grand Traverse County and Blair Township. And so we're going to see what those, we're not sure what we're going to find in any of those areas, but these are areas of the state where they would qualify for small and disadvantaged communities, and we could potentially get them set up to take advantage of additional PFAS funds for next year's state revolving fund and get the cities set up to do that if it turns out that they need funds to hook up the people to municipal water. So we're looking at those. Those have been the big topics. Those are the Blair Township and the Jackson stuff is all being done out of MPART. This is something that the districts didn't have capacity for, so we took that on ourselves to help with that. The rest of these are district-led sites. So those are the big ones. And then as Bill noted in his update, yes, as I understand it, the official 60 days have lapsed, and now the CERCLA PFOA and PFOS designation is official. So EPA, all the Superfund sites, all those do not have any impediment to them implementing and pursuing PFOS and PFOA investigations for Superfund sites. So I think things will get easier in the future as far as that goes. So those are my big, really big updates for now. I was off last week, so still digging out from my emails. So I think those are the ones we wanted to talk about. Yeah.
Do you know when the state's going to look at the new MCLs that EPA put out? And
yes,
you know,
that's
they
in
are lower than our
process.
current one. So do you know what the process is for that, or the plan?
Ian is on, and I'm going to I think Ian's on, right, Ian? Did I see you? Yes. Ian, you want to talk to that? Go ahead.
Sure.
Nothing like throwing you there, Ian. Sorry.
No, that's
It's Ian's
fine.
program. He speaks this, he dreams this, he thinks about
He
this
just lives this.
24/7. So he might as well go ahead and be the star.
It's not my program. Please don't say that. So our division has begun our division Drinking Water Environmental Health has begun those conversations. We're meeting on a regular basis, and our head rule writer is in the process of putting together a draft strike bold of what Michigan's rules in light of EPA's rules will likely look like. It's a lot of L's. The idea is to get that ready ahead of the stakeholder outreach process, which is estimated to begin the last week of August and potentially run through the first week of September. So there'll be 2 stakeholder listening sessions, kind of bracketing the holiday there. The physical location will be Constitution Hall, but there will be a virtual option. We would very much like to have representatives of this group participate. So not to put any pressure back on Abby and Kelly and crew, but they can work with you all to determine who would like to be the representatives of the COG in those listening sessions. So you'll have an opportunity during those listening sessions to hear from us what we're thinking, give feedback, and then we will move to formally draft the rules from that point forward. Then the process moves along. And if you remember last time, there are many steps. We're hoping to get this done as comparable to last time, but last time we did have a bit of assistance from the executive to move things very, very quickly. So what I would expect, if I can give you a few teasers as to where we are, Michigan will likely move faster than the EPA. Okay, the EPA has published their MCLs, and they've attached a 3-year window for supplies to do their initial monitoring, and a further 2 years beyond that to come into compliance. Our residents are not going to accept that, is our basic feeling, nor should we. Okay, so we will move faster in that. Michigan has MCLs. There's no reason why we shouldn't move quickly to assure that we continue to have MCLs. We're currently looking at a model that kind of goes case by case through each of the EPA's numbers and would basically choose the lower of ours or theirs in each case. Okay, the EPA has proposed, or has not proposed, has published a hazard index for mixtures of 4 different compounds of at least 2 of those 4. We are likely going to adopt a version of that, again, looking compound by compound at which level is more stringent in each case. There are discussions to be had as to what that looks like, but that's kind of the 10,000-foot version. One more thing, we do have an additional MCL that the Fed does not. We will likely have that as well. So that would obviously be more stringent than no MCL, and that would be for PFHXA, as well as, I keep adding more, PFBS. The Fed has not published an individual MCL. Michigan does have one, so we will likely have and maintain an individual MCL for that compound as well. So that's where we're at. Progress is being made. It's a lot, it's a big lift, but we're confident we'll get through it. And soon, near future, we should have an idea as to what to expect as far as Michigan's implementation dates or kind of draft implementation dates. We'll propose what we think is doable. We'd like to hear from the stakeholders what their thoughts are, and then we'll make a decision or a revision and move forward from there. I see some hands in order. Rick, please.
Mine wasn't about the drinking water. I just had a general question. So you can let everybody that has questions on drinking water go ahead in front of me. So.
Okay. Thanks, Rick. I see a hand from Unverified. I think that's Sandy.
Connie.
Is that Sandy? Connie. Sorry, Connie.
Yeah.
Sandy ran in front of me with her name on the screen. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Two quick questions. When did you say would be the monitoring time period and then the compliance time period? And then
I can speak. Sorry, go ahead.
No, answer that one first, and then I have another quick one.
Okay. So for the EPA, so Michigan's may be different than what I'm about to say. We haven't determined it yet. What the EPA is requiring is that all supplies covered by the MCLs complete their initial monitoring, which is a set of samples, either 4 quarterly samples or 2 samples 6 months-ish apart, 5 to 7 months apart. That needs to be done by 2027, so 3 years, if my math is correct. Yes, 2027. Compliance with the MCLs, the EPA is requiring that by 2029.
So aren't we gonna be a little bit more stringent than the federal government?
Oh goodness, yes. I'm sorry if I didn't emphasize that point enough. We will very likely be a little swifter than that. And by a little, I mean
a lot.
Noticeable amount. Well, yeah, there are limits to what we can do. We need to give. So you're allowed to, under the EPA rule, utilize existing data, which Michigan has a lot of, but it has to fit the requirements of that onboarding. So that's the bad news. Well, the good news and the bad news is it has to fit the requirements. The medium news, kind of in between, is you get to mix and match. So if you have data for Q1 and Q4, that supply is going to need to fill in Q2 and Q3. They're 6 months apart. They've definitely got one. Just figure out when it is. They take the other one. They're compliant. So Michigan has a bit of a leg up over a lot of our sister states in that we've been collecting data for PFAS for a number of years, and anything post, there's a cutoff date for it. It has to be from a certain date on, and I don't remember it off the top of my head, but we certainly do have a considerable amount that we can comb through and kind of vet to see if it will count. So that should be helpful for many of our supplies.
Okay.
And the second question, please.
Yeah, real quick. Sometimes mixtures, the effect of PFAS compounds in a mixture is much more toxic than the individual compounds are. Do we have anything to deal with that from certain industries that will use a certain combination of PFAS? Or not?
For the time being, my understanding is we're going to move forward with the mixture model that the EPA has published as a baseline. So that's 4 compounds: PFHXS, PFBS, PFNA, and HFPO-DA or Gen X. Mixtures of 2 or more of those compounds, the EPA has designed a hazard index, which takes the hazard quotient for each of the 4 held up against a what they call a health-based water value as your denominator, and taking those quotients or those fractions, adding them together. If the running annual average of that sum exceeds 1, then there is a exceedance or a potential violation. And what that does, as you can probably reverse engineer from hopefully my explanation, is it allows mixtures where there's no individual exceedance of an individual MCL to potentially trigger an exceedance based on that mixture.
Okay,
So-
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mhm.
I would have brought slides. I'm sorry, I didn't know we were gonna dive in. My apologies.
That's all right.
You did
Yeah.
pretty darn good for just a like impromptu lecture on the new MCL, so I'm pretty impressed. That was good.
Yeah.
I've been,
I will say,
What-
all the water utilities of every state has said it can't be done, and we would say, hold my beer. We're from Michigan. We've been able to test water, so you
we've
guys
done
said.
it. Yeah.
It can
So-
be done. And what
All
Ian
right.
has not said is that this undertaking to do rule writing this quickly is a major, major monumental task. So hats off to the drinking water staff who are making it work and making it happen to get this done in time, because we'd like to get these rule sets out. We'd like to get all of this promulgated as quickly as possible. And promulgation normally, a promulgation process through the public, public comment periods and all the things normally takes about 18 months. And we're trying to get it done in less than 9. So this is a big, big undertaking, but there will be public comment, the opportunity for public input. You guys will get to see it. And as Ian says, we want you guys, somebody, a couple people from the COG to be involved in, at least be a conduit back, so you guys can have a front row seat to this whole proceedings.
We want these voices. I mean, I can take your voices by memory, but it's better if you're there, trust me.
I think, Rick, you had your hand up, and so did Bill Barnett for a second. Rick, are you still here?
Yeah, are we done with the drinking water section, or? Yeah, I just I was wondering if there's going to be an update on the Eat Safe Fish in the near future, where that stood.
Yeah, I think we can tee that up for another conversation, either in August or September, and take that back. I didn't bring anybody from DHHS to specifically talk about that. And I do have Jocelyn's on, she can take notes for us and take it back to DHHS, but we are still waiting to see exactly when the 2024 guides will come out for Eat Safe Fish, because we had to include all of that new data, that rerun data from the smelt advisory. So we wanted to get that included. So they're in the process of putting that all back together, and I think it's close, but I will ask.
Okay, thank you.
And we could put that on the agenda for August if it works, or September.
All right, and Bill?
Yep, thank you. Just saw last night on the news that our legislative body, one of them or both, are working on some legislation to empower, put a higher power or strength or efficiency on Eagle, to give them more powers or maybe more administrative strength. And that, of course, brought forward the Farm Bureau, who was against the administrative section of our state getting more power, and environmental groups in favor of doing this new legislation. I just wondered if anyone could update our group as to what is going on with that movement and the likelihood of success, and what changes or positives could come out of that are related to this committee.
I do not have an update on that. I saw the thing go across the TV, and I've not read the articles to see exactly what they were talking about. So I don't know if,
Daniel Brown, you got any insight into that?
yeah, somebody else got insight.
Yeah.
Was it?
So the top level summary is that it is outside the scope of what anybody other than sort of the director, deputy director at Eagle, I think would be appraised of. It is basically a effort to restore Eagle's authority in an array of basically water quality, drainage decisions, and everything related to that. The political discussion behind the scenes has been pretty complicated, so it's hard to summarize that. I think it's fair to say that the vast majority of environmental groups, including my group, Huron River Watershed Council, supports it. The groups that have generally been opposed, as you might expect, it's groups that are basically lobbyists for manufacturing or agriculture that generally oppose regulations generally. The drain commissioners or water resources commissioners across the state, I think it's fair to say, are pretty split on this. Some like having more localized control. Others would prefer to kick it back to the state. I don't know if that's if that's a sort of summary that you're looking for, but that's kind of where it stands. But generally, I'd say it's a political discussion as opposed to a. I don't want to put the Eagle and state agency folks that are on the call on the spot with that.
Okay.
Well, there was a talk from Farm Bureau. They were wanting decisions like this to be made by the legislative body and not the science people. The way I took it is they want the legislators to override or continue to, politics over science was my concern.
I hadn't thought of it, in light of the recent Chevron ruling decision from the federal Supreme Court. I hadn't thought of it in the context of, is it sort of state subject matter experts versus policy, lawmakers, and where does the power reside? I don't think most of us thought or saw the discussion in that light. I think it was more that we saw a clear need in many parts of the state, and I'm speaking for the folks that advocated for it, of course, but we saw a need in many parts of the state to return authority to Eagle, where municipalities didn't have the capacity or weren't getting it right. So I didn't see it in terms of that, sort of political decision making versus subject matter decision making context. I saw it basically in terms of Eagle needed more enforcement authority to do their jobs. I think it's the short version.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I know, I can't speak too much about the specifics of some of the conversations that have been going on around this. I know part of this, and I don't know if this is the whole bill that's being promoted here, but I know Part 31, which governs the water quality standards for surface water, is something that currently Eagle cannot make any changes to the water quality rule sets that governs the way we do water quality standards. So the water quality standards for surface water are a narrative process. So it means it describes a process, how we take the inputs and the calculations, and we come up with a number. That process is set. And so right now it's a stagnant process. Since 2006, it looks like we've not been able to make any changes to that narrative process. We can come up with the numbers, but they don't have the ability by law to make any changes to the way they calculate those numbers. So that's what I know our department has been advocating, is to try to come up with, or what Eagle's been advocating, to try to come up with a way to get back that rulemaking authority so that they can make necessary changes to, the inputs for the actual technical inputs that would be necessary for coming up with water quality standards. I'm sure there's much more to it than that, because like I said, I haven't read the bill. And I haven't been inside on any of those conversations, but I do know that's been one of the hampering pieces that Eagle has felt over the years, is they do not have that ability under Part 31, not Part 201, but Part 31, to make any rule changes by law. So for good or bad, that's the way it's been. And that's apparently what this is all wrapped up into. So, and it looks like, I'll put this thing in the chat for everybody. Looks like there was something in the advance about the Senate passing a bill to restore Eagle's ability to set those water quality standards, or to change the, the rulemaking process for setting water quality standards. Good question though, Bill.
That is a good question. Thanks for noticing that. All right, I think the other thing that, switching gears a little bit here, I know, and I'm probably going to lean on Mary a little bit for this. I wasn't at the last meeting and we talked, and one of the issues that came up, I think, was the idea of setting goals, like what are we trying to achieve with the COG? What is our purpose and mission with this? And looking at the questionnaire that went out, it was kind of interesting to see how many different sort of ideas and versions that we had of that. And I know one of the things that happens in any group is that you get this, in group therapy, we call it drift. You get this drift away from what your initial thing was. Mary, I think you sent out the charter when you did the last email. Is that true? I can't find Mary.
Yes, I sent out the charter and I also sent out the survey. And
Okay.
Kelly also, when she was doing the announcement for the, I don't know how many people were able to actually get through that, but yeah, and part of our leadership discussion followed a conversation that I had had with Abby and Kelly. They had stated it's difficult to plan programs and that, not knowing where the COG is coming from. So one of those things also is thinking about what we'd like to accomplish in the next 3 or 4 months. So it might be easier for MPART and Eagle to provide education if that is what we need from them. But also it was brought up that there is divisions within the COG, and I have to agree with that. And I wonder if part of those divisions comes from the standpoint of people's individual community issues that they're having, whether people feel that they're being met or not. And that happened even during the Engaging the Public subcommittee meeting just today. So, I definitely think that Connie had strong opinions on that. And anybody who went on the bus tour that Geopan put on around the time of the National PFAS conference and went down to where Teresa Landrum and Samra live, can certainly understand that the issues that some of these environmental justice communities are facing are incredible. On that bus got out while Teresa Landrum was talking. They got back on the bus and several people complained of having a headache just from being exposed to the air that was, happening there. So, that might be something that even the COG might like to do. I know that Rockford and Belmont had a tour recently through Geopan, and maybe COG members would want to host some of that as well.
Well, and that made me wonder if sometimes I think we do have a lot of kind of factions and whatnot, but I'm wondering if part of it is we haven't reviewed that charter, and have we drifted away from what our charter for the COG is? It doesn't mean the other issues aren't important. It just may mean that we need to address those in other venues than the COG. Because I think the COG has a very specific charter of what we're supposed to be doing versus some of the other stuff that is important, but do we need to do that? Most of us are involved in a lot of different groups. I mean, Daniel talks about, Huron River and all the groups that he's involved in, most of us are. Do we need to do some of those advocacy things in other groups? That's the only thing I'm throwing out as, I guess, for a discussion. I don't know if we need to pull that charter up so people can take 3 minutes and just review it. I know if you're like me, you get emails and don't always read them all the way through in every attachment. I'm just throwing that out there for conversation to see what people think.
Well, I can say that at the last meeting as well, that Tony was adamant that we should not. We should not be looking at changing the charter. He was adamant about that. But I members feel that the things that are in the charter are serving the COG. I don't know.
So I guess I'm opening up for discussion. Would people like to review that charter, or do you have it right now that you can review? Or can someone drop it in the chat? I have it up if you want me to pull it up. And if that's what our purpose is for the COG, then we need to set our goals around what that charter says our purpose is what I'm wondering. And what would those goals be? So that's the question I'm throwing out there for people. If people would like to jump in, it would be better than sitting in silence.
So this is Dan. I don't know. I think others have stronger feelings about this than I do, but I feel like at least many of us have reviewed the charter at different points over the last several months. My sense is that we should continue to follow what is in the charter. That is the charter of the group. There are a lot, and you'll hear me talk about this a lot. There are a lot of other options to engage, like you were saying, Sandy. There are a lot of other groups that are working on the political advocacy side, or things that are outside the scope of what the COG was intended for. And I think it makes more sense to pursue those other activities in those other groups that are more fitting for that. And of course, anybody on this call is welcome to reach out to any number of us that are involved in those other groups to engage.
Thanks, Daniel. Rick?
I think the charter is good. If you look at number 1 under goals and objectives, it tells us about the things that we can do, and then there's number 2 about how to engage and work on the COG. I think those there's points A through H on how to engage, and then there's A through F in terms of working with MPART's efforts. I think that gives a lot of flexibility. I would agree with Tony that I think the charter is flexible enough that I think we can accomplish quite a bit. I mean, we have quite a bit of leeway to comment and make recommendations on nature, format, timing of MPART's response to communities. I think it gives us a lot of flexibility. So I would not recommend changing it right now. So
All right. Thanks, Rick. Other comments or thoughts or ideas or?
I know we've covered it in past meetings, but are there any topics or concerns that COG members would like to see as possibly education components that Eagle or MPART could provide? Working on that?
So yeah, the PFAS conference gave me a lot of ideas. I think it gave a lot of us a lot of ideas. I see Sandy nodding. You know, as we were talking about the MCLs earlier and just reflecting on the PFAS conference, you know, HF, you know, what was it? HPA, PFHPA emerged as, I think, a pretty obvious contaminant of concern to look at. You know, so that's just one example of, you know, I think getting a subject matter expert to give us a review of the literature, maybe what the state is planning to do about that chemical in particular, I think is worth it. You know, I think something else that really jumped out to me that Rob Bilott talked about it the last day is the concerted effort that PFAS manufacturers and users are making to integrate PFAS or PFAS chemicals of a different name into the supply chain of various industries in order to proactively make the argument that they're too ingrained into the supply chain to remove. So that they are actively working to get these deeply embedded, for example, in the manufacture of lithium-ion batteries. And while obstructing the opposition of research into safer alternatives. So I think thinking about where PFAS are in the supply chain generally, particularly as it relates to some of those, you know, more emerging markets and what, you know, the landscape of research and potential regulation looks like on those future markets, I think is important. I think that's where the next, you know, the next vulnerabilities are going to arise, and we saw industries do this in the past with asbestos and lead. This is not a new practice. You know, it's companies, you know, protecting their own interest by getting their poisonous substances into everything so that they're harder to remove from anything. You know, it's really sort of brazen disregard for everybody else, but we've seen this before. So I think, you know, any educational expertise that officials can share on, you know, research behind some of those emerging things, those new contaminants, short chain PFAS. There's a lot there. I've gone on, but you get the idea. I think there's a lot that we can think about.
Okay, thanks, Daniel. Rick.
Yeah, I would like to echo what Dan was talking about, because you know, one of the things that came out of the conference was exactly what he was referring to with something like the lithium-ion batteries. The electrolytes are all PFAS compounds. They're trying to make that an essential use because it's, you know, for green energy and, you know, carbon and everything else. And I really have no idea what people are doing with the battery plants that are coming to Michigan. I mean, there's a big one in Holland, there's a big one in Big Rapids. What's happening to the waste? You know,
what's
I
happening
think
to the workers?
Yeah, and that's the big thing when you start looking at you know, information coming out of China. There's a lot of pollution, but the worker exposure is off the charts. You know, working in semiconductors and things like that. So you know, I think that's something that the COG could be very active in terms of, you know, what's happening with these new emerging chips and battery industries. You know, everybody says it's safe. How do we know that? You know, I don't know what they're doing with the wastes. And, you know, if you look at a place like Big Rapids, I mean, they don't have an advanced wastewater treatment plant, and they probably, you know, use their sludge for agriculture or something like that. Yeah, I think that's certainly a good point, and I am concerned just because, you know, if it gets labeled as an essential use, it's going to be really hard to deal with. And you know, we heard so much about PFAS being an essential use for the AFFF, and they do have alternatives. So I'm sure there are alternatives to that. So anyway.
So kind of winding us back here, it sounds like I've heard from a few people that the way the charter stands right now, we can work within and probably make some progress, though I also heard people say there are things that they would like to do outside of that charter, and maybe we can move people into the other groups to do that. But I haven't heard from everybody, so I want to make sure everybody has a chance to weigh in here and give their views and ideas on that. I also know we have a really small group, and it is July and we're hot. So, I mean, I think this is a conversation we need to have at the next meeting too, if more people are here, on recognizing what our role is within the charter and how we do that. But we still need to set some goals on how are we going to know we're successful at what we do. I don't think we could do that tonight with this smaller group, but I don't know the best way to do that. Do people have ideas of the best way to set goals for the next year? Is that a subcommittee? Is that just a part of the conversation at the next couple CAG meetings? Jocelyn. Yay, Jocelyn.
Yeah, hi everybody. I guess I just had a question. Have you guys ever done like an annual plan of work that would encompass your goals? Like, you know, maybe having large overarching goals, but then like an annual plan of work of like what you want to accomplish that year to meet those, or at least work towards them. Just a thought. I don't know. I'm a little newer here, so.
I don't believe we've ever done that. No. And I would love to do that. I would love it if somebody would like to facilitate that kind of activity. And Jocelyn puts her hand right down, like, don't call on me.
So we, HRWC and several of the environmental organizations did that, and the gentleman that was excellent at helping us think through sort of those annual and long-term goals was in fact Phil Roos, our director of Eagle. So the expertise is built in somewhere.
Right. But that is, I think, what we need. I think that's what I'm kind of getting at, is that we need to have some kind of goals that we're working towards, so we're not just floundering around and getting frustrated with each other.
Well, I would be open to facilitating that, but also if there's another COG member that would like to take on that role, more than happy to let them do that. You know, it's your guys' work group, so.
Well, thank you. Thank you for offering. Other ideas here, or volunteers, or thoughts?
Sandy, were you looking at the next meeting for the discussion on the subcommittees as a whole, or that might be a good time to discuss whether we want to do a subcommittee as this goals or mission, or how we go about that?
Yeah, we could do that. I worry a little about doing a subcommittee to set goals, because to me it's kind of what everybody should be a part of, but I'm open to ideas. Whatever we can get people to do, I think whatever people think.
Sandy, I didn't get a chance, or I can't get the survey to open, or Mary can probably answer this question, but did you guys get some of these ideas from the last survey that was done as well?
We had some input from people as far as the subcommittees who felt that the subcommittee should continue. The problem is that they're not well attended. And, you know, we have not been able to determine whether they're not attended because of the time frame that they're, you know, at 4:30 and at 5 o'clock. If that, you know, for the website at 4:30 and the engaging the public is at 5 o'clock on the same day as the COG meeting. If those are challenges to that, although Rick Radisky, when he was head of the engaging the public, he did try to offer us, I think, a 7 o'clock meeting on an alternate day. And I still don't know that very many people attended that. So, and I know with Dave Wynn, the other preventative meeting, we did not have many people that attended that as well. After the, I think, initial survey, there were people who said that they would like to join certain groups, and I think the chair people sent them the information each month when it came out, and you know, there was very little follow-up to that. So you know, I think one of the things that Sandy had brought up in our discussion was the own Zoom links, but not everybody. And, you know, whether some people are even able to use those Zoom links because some of them are tied to their work, as opposed to, you know, just open. So, I don't know, you know, that's another thing that Joe Kang has brought up in the past, is that because the COG is constrained by no budget, that, you know, not being able to do our own Zoom if we need to, or, you know, that's an issue. So.
So I think those are problems we can try and figure out. But I think first we have to see, is that the reason why we don't have good turnout at subcommittees? Is there just not an interest? Are people just stretched thin? I mean, I think we just got to sort that out. And maybe that's a discussion to have. So I'm open to keeping this discussion going, but it's a pretty small group of COG members today. I hate to keep all the agency people sitting here watching us staring at each other. My thought is that we continue this discussion at the August agenda on what's the best way to facilitate a meeting that we can have, set some goals for the next year. But first, I'm going to let Connie speak because her hand is up.
Yeah, thanks, Sandy. Reading the charter, it's basically like a superficial PR type of goals and objectives. For example, the goal, how do we engage impacted communities? Okay, you're talking about communication. 2, how do we engage the general public on MPART's efforts? Again, it's communication. To me, it seems like we don't have any very productive goals. I mean, in the PFAS area, what would you want to do first? The first thing you would want to do is to get rid of the sources of PFAS to protect the public health. I mean, that should be the most obvious thing there is. Yet our goals are, how are we going to engage? How are we going to communicate? We spent a lot of time on a public notification document. It was snubbed by Eagle staff. It was snubbed by the director. So our work, we feel like we put so much time and effort into that document and it gets kicked to the curb. So it seems like we don't, like, our goals just are too amorphous. They're too general. Engage with communities. Why aren't we doing more to get rid of PFAS out of the whole system? How come we're not doing more to protect public health? And we can't really do anything, to be honest with you, because this charter says
Connie, I'm hoping you muted yourself and no one else did that. Here we go.
oh, I'm sure somebody else did it, but no, I did not unmute myself. My only point is that the charter is very vague and it's more like a good PR document for the governor, as I said before. We have no authority whatsoever. We can do anything,
Right.
we can advise, but they'll just say, no, we're not going to do it. Like they told us on the public notification document we spent, 3 years on. So
That's true. That is what the COGS charter says. But I think like what Daniel had said, and I think what Rick had said, is there are other groups that can be more forceful to push things, but we're not going to have any power. I mean, we don't. I don't have a
well,
good way
what
to
I'm
say it.
asking for is to Eagle to approve that public notification document, to use it. And they didn't do that.
I agree.
I find it disheartening, be honest with you on that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it, Sandy.
I get what you're saying, Connie. I do. And I think we can put our reasons and our voice out there, which I do think gets heard. But I think I think we have to recognize that our power is limited, aside from the collective voice that we have, that can be pretty persuasive. We have seen it be persuasive. We got freaking MCLs through at the federal level. Voices can be persuasive, just maybe not in this forum, is what I'm trying to say. But now I'm pontificating. So, all right.
Sandy, before you end,
Yeah.
I would like to thank Jocelyn Marsick for offering to facilitate a discussion on overriding goals and other aspects, and I would be happy to join that. I think maybe if we continue it next month, we can hopefully get a few more people to be involved in that. But I guess another point that I have is that I kind of agree with Connie in the fact that with the COG, how effective can we be without some of those things? Should we have to go out of this group to join others? So that's my only concern. Thank you.
All right. Other comments, other people? Connie, your hand is still up.
I'm sorry, I'll take it down.
That's okay. You can wave to me all day. That's good.
Okay.
Well, Jocelyn, thank you for offering that. I'm going to let you and Mary connect a little bit on that, if you guys could, and talk about that. And then I'd like this conversation to continue next month. I'm hoping we have more people that attend, more actual COG members attend, so we can get more conversation. I don't think it's one that we're going to decide in a 1 or 2 meetings. I think it's going to have to be the continued conversation about it. So, Abby, do you have anything else? I know we're early, but we didn't have a big schedule.
I don't have anything else technical. I will just say that although I was not there I was doing PFAS work, but I wasn't there for the original COG meetings when Steve Sliver and the group set these up. But I thought the original thinking and the reason that the governor's office asked these to be set up or established MPART was to ensure that citizens had a direct line on PFAS matters to us, so that they didn't feel like they had to call the governor's office, or they didn't feel like they had to call the director to Beagle, that there was a way to actually have somebody to talk to about issues around PFAS. So, yeah, I hear you loud and clear that there's frustration. And, you know, I kind of agree with Sandy in that there's potentially other bodies that could do the advocacy and some of the other things that you guys want to do that are more action oriented. But I think this group is, you know, historically been more about ensuring that everybody, that the voices can be heard, that there's, you know, issues of public health. I hope we're not avoiding public health issues, that you guys have that opportunity to bring that up directly with us. So, but Ian, go ahead and jump in.
I just wanted to offer my viewpoint. You know, I've been going to these meetings since the Steve Sliver days, the old days and the before times. And I'm convinced that your voices do have an effect. You know, I, as somebody in a more regulatory body, am thinking, trying to put myself into your minds on a constant basis. What would the public do if this and if that? And what you offer, for me at least, as a state employee, is that this is my conduit to where the public is on those days when I don't have other opportunities to go out and attend a public meeting or anything like that. You represent so much on behalf of the public, and I just want to let you know that you do drive what we do, even if it is frustrating and it's not as direct as you would like it to be. I just want to give some words of encouragement that you do drive what we do. So thank you.
Thank you, Ian. That's appreciated.
Definitely well said, Ian. I would agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and I guess, and thanks for that, Ian. I think that makes us all feel good. You know, what I want to emphasize is that I've never felt like it's that we're not being heard. I don't think that has ever been my feeling. And I do appreciate you know, what Abby said, which is that it is a way for citizens to you know, have this conduit to state officials and have a back and forth with state officials to learn from state officials, for state officials to learn from us. And I think that happens from where I'm sitting. It certainly happens with, you know, folks that we work with, you know, in my professional capacity with DNR and you know, the Eagle staffers we worked with at times. You know, I'm constantly hearing that they're at all levels, they are referencing what people in the COG have said at different times. So it is not that from where I sit, it is not that we're not being heard. I think what, you know, Connie's frustration was highlighting, which I think is a frustration for many of us, and I think is a broader thing that we need to consider going forward, is that, you know, I think we are an advisory committee. It is our duty to advise. We have no authority, and government can listen to us or not. So they can listen to our advice or not, but it is our duty to advise. The question I think that comes up is, what happens and what do we do when our advice is not taken and we feel it should be? And that's a broad question, not related to any specific thing, but I'm sure that over time, this will come up, you know, time and again. It has with every advisory committee at some point, right? So, yeah, I think that, you know, several of us were thinking through, like, what is the process? This committee, this advisory committee, will hopefully last, you know, between administrations and political parties and changes and so forth. There will be differences of opinion. and we have to anticipate that. So what happens when we don't feel like our advice is being taken? What are the other avenues? I think some of what we've talked about is that, yeah, if you feel like there are political changes that are needed, there are other groups that are, working on policy changes and political advocacy and so forth. And if it's an internal change that you'd like to hear more about within a department, I think the COG offers some avenues for that, but there are other groups that do that as well. So again, I think it's what's the role of this group in a constellation of others, and I think that is, we just have to reckon with how does that fit into the broader ecosystem.
That's well said, Dan. Well said. Because I think that's exactly the situation that I see as well. And I don't necessarily have a great answer, so I'm going to let you guys continue to mull over this because I certainly don't want to influence your discussions in any way, but we'll continue to be here to listen along and see what we can do to assist. Sandy, do you have anything else?
The only other thing I was going to say is it looks like for future agenda issues, there was talk about seeing if Phil Roos would come back and meet with us again in the next couple months. I think that would be great, so we could ask questions and kind of get a feel for what's going on. And I also heard
if we're going to, sorry,
Yeah,
Sandy,
ahead,
if we're going to do that, could we make it in the September meeting in case the August meeting is also not very well attended?
I suspect Phil's got a few things on his plate and may need a couple months to schedule. So yeah, I think that's a good idea. And let's give people some notice too, because I think that would, he can be a rock star and get people attending or something.
Especially on his calendar. I did mention it to him that you guys were asking, and he said absolutely not a problem. We'll just have to look at the calendar and see which month looks like it would be best for him.
Okay.
So,
and then also the Eat Safe Fish guidelines, whatever that update is, if we could get that on the calendar too. So
yep.
So with
Jocelyn's
that,
gonna put that out for us. The only other thing I was gonna say is I saw Randy Roth on here for Randy's been our Eagle RRD district supervisor for many years. And this will be he's actually retiring in next week. So, but he ditched us and now he's not on the call anymore. So Randy, if you're listening, happy retirement. Yes.
Oh man. All right.
So if you know Randy, shoot him a note, say happy retirement.
All right. Cool. All right. Anybody got anything else? If not, I'm going to give you 30 minutes of your life back.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. See you.
Okay. See ya. Bye.
Thanks.
I know.
Oops. Hey, Mike, you still there?
You need to turn off the recording. I think if you.
I know, I'm trying to, here we go. Stop recording.